Celebrant. Declend. As for me, I don't dream, I am dream. And I can't look down and get a clear look at the process that brings me about from moment to moment. That's Declend over there. I am here, and he's there. Imagine approaching a park bench up on your right. You crouch down, not far from one end of the bench. Declend appears on the bench, one leg casually thrown over the other. It's raining. His right hand rests on his right thigh and holds upright his capacitous umbrella. The left elbow is cocked onto the back of the bench, and a long, elegant left hand hangs in space. The head and shoulders are nearly lost in the cross-hatched shadow beneath the umbrella. The rain falls straight to the ground, and the umbrella makes a column of rainless air. He sits with his head tilted back a little, wearing an expression of self-satisfaction, although he might simply be enjoying himself. Declend is the type certain positions give rise to, or he likes to think he is, imagining he came into being like the figure between the two shapes in a mobile, an optical illusion like the vase with two faces confronting each other. One day happens to twist in the breeze, and there he is, with feline self-complacence, licking his hand and smoothing down his eyebrows and mustache. No embarrassing memories, no shameful home. He has a somnolent milk-white oval face and large circular eyes like liquid coal under heavy lids. A black muffler of fine lamb's wool is wound around and around his neck, and he keeps the ends tucked into his jacket sleeves. This makes his neck seem longer and causes him to tilt his chin up. He might be seen sitting on a park bench in Union Square, or on the Author's Walk, too close to a fine romantic drizzle, his right ankle across his left knee and his left elbow resting on the back. Drawing the sleeve of his jacket, the exposed cuff glows white in the gloom beneath his umbrella. He does absolutely nothing, but seems ready at any moment to pop up onto his feet and deliver a sheaf of fluorescent papers to a bureau. At the moment, he simply broadcasts his gaze, holding the long, loose fingers of his beautiful left hand slightly extended. The nails only look dirty. Actually, these are fingernail hyphens printed there in ink at the rim of the pink crescent. He can be found going to and fro in the street with an attaché case or a portfolio or loose papers or documents he's had to vaccinate with his own signature. Declend is strictly a go-between. He never originates anything. Even when he originates something, he does it as his own go-between. He conceals a principle in everything he does, and it's not his fault if people are too stupid to see it. All his images strictly adhere to the hidden pattern in the hidden centers, but as I say, he is his own go-between and is no more to be found in those hidden centers than anywhere else. I suspect he went from folly and shame to dignity and shame, and since he is already somewhere toward middle age, and there he became furious, sweet, wistful, and resigned. With a ruthlessness that is often shockingly like downright stupidity, he returns to images of the sky, the weather, the landscape. These are his Gorgon-turning shields. Clouds, the sky, the air, the smell, the trees, the horizon. He spends all his time thinking. He shuns desks and often conducts his affairs, whatever they are, sitting beneath a table in a lot stacked with domestic furniture. Wardrobes, sideboards, bookshelves, nightstands, hat stands, a great many wooden hampers and bins, all in rows many tens of feet high. He climbs under a table that happens to be standing on its legs, on the ground, as part of the bottom layer of one of these gigantic stacks, and writes, setting the papers down on the black, sticky ground before him and curling forward with his shoulders between his knees. While there, he savors the smell of cut lumber and varnish, and the smoldering aroma of old springs and the stuffing of the upholstered furniture stored inside the warehouse. Often he stares with glazed eyes at the underside of the table's far corner, which is braced with a cross-piece to form a triangle, all but bunioned and corned with brown glue that oozed from the joints and congealed lacquer. Hopeful people with things to sell make use of the alleyway, which runs perpendicular to the wind and so is one of the few places where it is bearable to stand outside for any long period of time. The period is necessarily long, since practically no one has any money to spend, less and less, and what money does get spent is spent on food. This means that the ones who want to sell books, clothes, household odds and ends must offer food as well. A basket of puny dried-up potatoes or a little jar of pickled plums, chocolate powder compressed into a cylinder and wrapped in newspaper. There's no shortage of food, but it goes elsewhere. Having found, to his complete astonishment, a coin in the return slot of a payphone, DeClend has come to the alleyway with the idea of buying something to eat. Immediately next to a tangle of rusted plumbing, there is a bare table with 3 broken, weather-beaten pies on it, and he makes for them at once. The man vending them also has a few dirty cardboard boxes packed with books, and some of them have been hastily slopped onto the table next to the pies. This man only missed being tall. There's a shawl of undyed wool draped over his head, and it dangles along his corduroy lapels like the ends of a judge's wig. He watches DeClend without getting up from the high stool he sits on, with a blazing little clay stove just in front of his feet. Taking DeClend's black coin with a brisk turn of his puffy hand, he gestures to the books haphazardly stacked by the pies. "Go on and take one," he says, "if you like." "There's no charge?" DeClend asks. "Go on," the former replies. "They're not worth my carrying them around anymore." As often happens when he examines lists or rows of books or other labeled or titled things, he looks too closely, is immediately confused, and fails to take much of anything in. This makes close perusal necessary, and what feels like a great deal of needless effort, but presently he chances to select one of them and so takes possession of it. On examination, this book presents itself as a geographical encyclopedia, surveying a great many different countries. The authors, whose names are not prominently displayed anywhere in its numerous pages, but only intercalated with the material in the undemonstrative way one would expect from a genuine encyclopedia, invented these countries and their peoples and customs by modeling them on familiar ones, mixing traits, modifying some, reorganizing large social shapes such as monarchies, often by tracing the ramifications of a very minor change. The article that DeClend finds most interesting describes Votu, a country on a high plateau surrounded by gargantuan mountains. The entry goes on for over 100 pages, and the writers even went to the trouble of supplying a great many photographs. Some show people who seem to be very cleverly made up, or they might come from somewhere west of the roseate Lamina. Although there are no mountains like those in that direction to the best of his knowledge, which is small, this imaginary country is stuffed with monasteries, each one built around a small library of precious texts, which, far from being very old, are at the same time premature, and as old or older than the orders themselves, because they come from the future and have yet to be written. These books, spelled B-O-O-K-S, are called books, pronounced like flukes, to distinguish them from books, like hooks. It is an unvarying tenet of these monastic sects that books are not sent from the future with any deliberation or addressed to the past in any way. They simply happen to appear. Time, they say, only seems to have a single direction. In fact, time runs in all directions, which is another way of saying it just runs, period. And disciples who have achieved the highest state of mental skillfulness are able not only clearly to conceive of this abstruse idea, but even to observe time's emission or scintillation on a grand scale, ocularly. Books are borne back into the present from the future in what is vaguely described as a kind of ambient current. They can be read, and naturally the mathetes pore over them, but their sanctity has less to do with their content which is as diverse as any chance sample of books, although not all mathetes are convinced that the content is diverse by chance, or even diverse at all. Regardless of and above the question of opinion with respect to content, the books are sacred because in reading them one is reading words that exist in the present as words that will be written and not copied, since these are the original words. They will be written, and that means there is an invocation, a summoning note that calls from them. They will be written. Their content ultimately comes down to what answers more than anything else about them. The mathetes read the books, whatever their other reasons might be, in order to remain within their call and be near to what is to come.